Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Eyes On. I'm Andy Mulder.
Jason Lyons.
I'm Dimitri.
So today, no real surprise. I guess we're still on Israel, not just because I'm here. But guys, I thought I'd kick off by giving you kind of insights from the Israeli perspective, by the IDF's perspective. Okay, this isn't from official press release. It's just from um, the people I know within the IDF. To my knowledge, this hasn't reached the press, but obviously it's not stuff that is classified. Otherwise, I wouldn't be saying this. But um, so as they go through this, an interesting thing here, and I don't know if this is all caught up in kind of the understandable backlash to 7 October and this feeling of isolation that is quite strong here in Israel. I'm just commenting on facts. Um, but there is a feeling here that certainly among the establishment that was not kind of a token gesture, potentially worse to come, and that not responding to this last one would be a sign of weakness. Okay, that's a very strong message coming from the government. The IDF's not all on board with that. A number of senior IDF, well, it's not fair for me to say, yeah, senior IDF officers who have been studying Iran for a while think that this is a strategic shift and that this is an opportunity not for peace with Iran, but at least to de-escalate, and that Israel should take this. I'm just saying this is an alternate point of view. Well, if you read in the press, the British and the Americans, to their chagrin, feel as though Netanyahu is going to ignore them and still strike at Iran. If that happens, I am assured, not that people need to assure me, it's nice, but I'm assured that it'll be done in a quote common sense manner. Again, unwritten rules of the game here are not to inflict civilian casualties. The Israelis can be extremely precise if they want to, as we saw in Damascus. So, yeah, we'll see. I would say undoubtedly, we're likely to see an Israeli attack against Iran. It's going to have to be in the next week to 10 days because rules of the game are such that if they wait too long, now they start another cycle. I mean, it's when I ask, well, how long? No one will tell me because no one really knows. It's like pornography; you just recognize it, I guess. But likely to be a strike back in the next, I would say, the next week or two, but not a serious strike now. Don't get me wrong. There's no country in the world that targets Iran more comprehensively and thoroughly than Israel does, more so than we in the United States. They have the means to do some pretty devastating things to Iran's economy, communications networks. I'm not just talking about cyber, we're talking about internal kinetic stuff. I mean, they have certainly the ability to bring Iran to its knees, at least temporarily, um, in a relatively short period of time. But that's not what is going to happen. My point is simply this, this will probably be a gesture. When I brought up the point that, hey, this looked like a game of Tetris, admittedly a game of Tetris in which I felt quite highly invested. But he said, hey, look, this wasn't a game. It may have been true they weren't going after population centers, but they were going after the Nevatim air base. All right, and it seems like every drone that got through. By the way, 350 drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles were launched. Not necessarily the 3,000 that were reported earlier. I don't know if that is a correct number, but that's what the IDF is saying. But they're saying together these weigh more than 60 tons. All right, and that's 60 tons of explosive. Each ballistic missile has roughly a 500-gram warhead, and Iran fired 110 of these. So the point is, this wasn't like all shot fired off into the middle of the desert. It was aimed at least once it got through, it definitely aimed at a specific military base. And the Israelis had the F-35 that performed pretty well, but that was all close in, right? You guys remember it was like, do you remember when we used to practice setting up engagement areas for anti-armor and
Mhm.
the whole law more concept?
Yeah.
You start hitting them. You coordinated your fires, synchronized your fires at every phase line to converge and conduct and inflict maximum casualties. Essentially, is what at the optimum range of those weapon systems. That's what an engagement area is. And so, if essentially you had this, the sky between here and Iran is that engagement area, and as they were moving, they were being attrited by countries en route. You will have noticed that UAE and Saudi are saying, they did not participate, as in they didn't send up aircraft. Um, the Israelis said they, of course, had to say, well, they participated way more than people realize, and that's probably true, and for obvious reasons, Saudi and UAE don't want to tell people. Um, Jordan, foreign press insisting that Jordan did launch aircraft. Um, and again, I think personally that's probably likely, but King Abdullah is in a really, really difficult position. I mean, Jordan, over 50% of the population, some say 80% of the population are Palestinian. And if you're noticing what's happening in Jordan, they are among all Arab country populations, they are most up in arms at what Israel is doing, demanding their government put a stop to it. And so you can imagine tremendous pressure in that. Now, ironically, so you've got the population of a country that has just taken a huge risk for Israel, that is Jordan. But the population is filled with animus towards Israel, most of the population. And yet you have Iran, and if you guys are reading reports back from Iran, there is no such anger among the population. Um, and the weird thing is, Iranians don't grow up with this visceral hatred of Israel in the way that a lot of Arabs do. Um, and so to them, it's kind of an artificial imposition by their government, who they hate. It is true that if their country is threatened, it doesn't matter who threatens them, they will unite as Persians behind one. And that's why the administration is profiting from all of this. If you notice in Iran in the last series of, you notice, so, hey, yeah, I have, oh, no, if you notice, you've been reading about Iran, I do because I'm a geek, I'm interested in the country, but the the elections, I think there were municipal elections held earlier this year, but they're all they all were represented by the national parties, and in typical Iranian election fashion, of course, these are sham elections, and so everyone is steadily attrited and disqualified except for the government's choice. Well, there was a record low turnout for elections this year, has never been lower since the revolution, which is arguably another indicator that the Iranian population is beginning to have enough. What that means, of course, is likely to be limited, but be interesting to see. So, but Iran, by all accounts, Iran, for what it's worth, not Soleimani, speaking from heaven, Khomeini, talking to Putin by phone, reportedly said, "Hey, listen, Iran does not want escalation, and there's no reason why Iran would at this point. Iran was sitting very pretty the way things were going. It doesn't need to be dragged in itself into a war. But while all this is going on, Hezbollah is bubbling up north here. Hezbollah, Iran's proxy, unclear. The Israelis are unclear. They know that Nasrallah got a direct order from there we go, Khomeini, to say, do not get involved. Don't don't uh, don't plunge us into war. Basically, don't bring us beyond a point from which we cannot return. Um, Now, so Hezbollah launched a pretty serious drone and rocket attack yesterday up north. Actually, an hour. I was I was nowhere. I mean, I was up there at the time. I didn't see or hear it. But it did inflict casualties and in some critical condition, 10 wounded, being treated up there. And the Israelis conducted three strikes back already into Lebanon. One is in Shabaya Farms area. Remember, I said what happens area kind of stays there, but they got bottom line is they killed three high-ranking Hezbollah members, one in Shabaya Farms and two to elsewhere. So you see this, the game still continues, up north here in these, and there's a vast area, by standards of Israel, vast area that has been evacuated, some 45,000. No, I'm sorry, 75,000 people told have been evacuated up there. I was up, I've been in that area. I went up yesterday, the day before, to Metula, which is the most exposed kibbutz way out forward, like on a finger pointing into Lebanon. And I was sitting there, and you've got high ground on the Lebanese side. You've got Lebanese villages that in the past have been Hezbollah nodes. And remember, Hezbollah fighters are not outsiders in southern Lebanon. They're indigenous. They grew up there. So it's this whole UN farce about, hey, you must push all your armed militias north of the Litani. Well, 75% of Hezbollah lives south of the Litani. So why the fuck would they move? You know what I'm saying? It just shows.
Yeah, why would they move from where they live? Yeah.
Why? Yeah, they live there anyway. So there are these villages that the Israelis call Hezbollah villages, and they're up on the high ground above Metula. All right, so Metula, Metula can be schwacked also from Syria and Lebanon at the same time. So property values have gone down there pretty dramatically. And my point there was, I just can't see this place being repopulated ever unless Hezbollah, really does disarm.
They totally evacuated that kibbutz?
Not only the kibbutz, Kiryat Shimona.
Okay.
Kiryat Shimona is one of the largest towns up north. And I hate that cliche, it's like a ghost town, but it is weird. You drive through that and, there's nothing. There's no cars on the roads. There's no one in the gas stations. It's nothing like anything I saw. What it was like a frontline town in Donbass, except there were more people in the frontline town in Donbass than there were in. So the scale of the evacuation of all of these people have to live somewhere. They rolled down in Tiberias or in barns around there. So we talked about the economic burden just keeps stacking up here for Israel, and then it's another pressure point for the for the government. This latest piece, where Netanyahu, I'm just stating the facts, where he's talking about striking back to Iran. Truth be told, and I'm just talking to civilians and soldiers, I haven't met a single one who thinks that's a good idea.
Yeah, I saw a poll supposedly around 74% are against it.
Yeah, I'm like, and so this is very dangerous for the government, because in execution of the war in Gaza, they had like 90%. Well, no, that's not fair, because they had opposition from both the extreme right and also from families of the hostages. But for the most part, overwhelming percentage of the population supported the conduct of the war. All right, and it had no beef about the way it was being conducted. They did have a beef with Netanyahu. He is very, very unpopular. But while he represented the country at war, no one's going to tear him down. But now I'm not veering at stating facts. I'm just now what I'm hearing is a little bit. It's like, hey, wait a second, what the fuck, man? Iran, really? We just emerged from this miracle, right, where the nations of the world come together. And this is what I mean about it being dangerous, thinking of this as Tetris. And I got a text from people in the States saying, yeah, of course, this was just an elaborate. I'm like, not because I was here in Israel, but when you look, if you know anything about, that sounded horribly pompous, but an attack like that, it's really difficult to launch an attack like that and make it kind of a lame slap. It really, really is against a country of 10 million people. In a fairly small area.
Well, I mean, look at what went into defending it, right? Like US, UK, French, Jordanian.
Exactly. And that's what, that's what kind of like my people here now, because you don't hear a lot about that. You hear about the Arrow system and the F-35 I'm not suggesting that
No, well,
the
that's on
Israelis
top
aren't
of
great with
Israel's
tanks.
already
Yeah.
amazing like anti-air and aircraft, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm. Yeah, but they had been seriously affected. I don't know. I don't know what the breakdown is between destruction in the Israeli airspace and destruction from assets that included British Tornadoes, Aegis cruisers, supposedly Jordanian aircraft, um, as well as Israelis.
So,
So
Andy,
yeah, I mean, sorry, go on.
no, I was just going to ask. So, what does this do for Hamas, good or bad? Is the pressure still on them? Are operations still ongoing?
Yeah, it's not had, as you know, operations were in a lull in Gaza before this. The IDF had pulled out all but one brigade.
Mm.
Okay, so they've got one brigade. Um, it's outside an urban area. Actually, I could see it from where I was today. It's outside the Gaza City, but it's been launching raids into the city itself. In fact, they were obviously there was obviously some operation taking place today. There's a good deal of very audible bombing. I was down in one of the places by Gaza, and one of the IDF guys told me, yeah, they're conducting an operation. So they're just doing raids in and out, but that is because they came to a natural kind of a natural culminating point. So we talked about this that they one of the real problems here is that um, they've got a very small professional military. They like to say, "Hey, Israel has a large and modern army, but the part that is large isn't very modern, and the part that is modern isn't very large." Well, it's really, the point is I would say they put a disproportionate amount of reliance on a very small part of their regular army. So you take, I'll just give you numbers. I mean, we saw 340,000 Israelis mobilized in 48 hours. Okay, that's the strength of the Israeli military.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I just wanted to talk to you today about a way that you can help support the podcast if you're not already. We would really appreciate it if you guys went and reviewed us on Apple or Spotify. Those reviews really help people find the podcast and help it get recognized. And, if you've been enjoying the show, we really appreciate your support. Another thing that you can do to support the channel is to become a Patreon member. So we have Patreon memberships that start at just $5 a month. And when you sign up, you get access to all of our episodes ad free. That's the big bonus for that. I mean, we also do some Patreon bonus episodes for our subscribers. But this is the biggest and best way that you can support the Team House channel and podcast if you'd like to. And we really appreciate that. So go and check us out at patreon.com/the Team House.
But there's only about 20, 30,000 professional soldiers. All right. Now, at any given time, the IDF's much bigger than that because you have, 3 cohorts of conscripts at any given time within the military. But here's one thing: when you come into an operation like this, which requires a very high level of soldierly skill, as urban operations do, but you throw in hostages, now you are really, really reliant on a very, very small part of your force. And in this case, it was very specifically the Commando Brigade. And so the Israelis brought together 3 of their special operations forces. I'm going to mispronounce them, but the Dudavan, which is a battalion that specializes in operating in Arab territory. The Maglan, who have a mission where it's a counter-Iranian mission, but it involves long-range precision fires, organic and non-organic, and bringing them in a manner that is delivered against enemy vulnerabilities from close in. I don't know if I made that vague enough. And then you've got the EGAs, and the EGAs are trained specifically as guerrilla fighters. Okay, they are the term they use is we out Hezbollah, and they operate primarily, well, they were operating in Lebanon, in the same way probably the SAS were operating or not operating in Ireland proper, right, during the Troubles. The same type of mission, right? So anyway, so they brought these very highly specialized 3 battalions of special operations in, and they made them into a brigade of, when I say conventional infantry, people get angry, but they're Rangers, all right? And I'm not going to make any comments about Rangers. No, they're like good Rangers, which I know sounds like an oxymoron. But yeah, and so now they're relying very heavily. So this brigade is within the 98th Division, and if you watch, this brigade has changed around divisions, which is quite common in the Israeli military. But the commando brigade's been attached to whichever division's in the hotspot, right? And for a period, they detached part of the commando brigade early on to go up north when they thought Hezbollah was going to kick off. Well, my point is, whenever they come into a hard part of fighting, it's the commando brigade that goes in, secures a foothold, and do all the fighting. Oh, there's one other unit, the Yahlom, who are their combat engineers, who are also taking tremendous amount of it. I mean, not tremendous amount of it. I don't mean to say that. Lower than conventional infantry took in Fallujah, but they're still taking, they can ill afford to lose these guys. We can afford to lose a few grunts, right? That's what the Marine Corps is all based on, as the Emery says in Full Metal Jackets. Marines die. That's what we're here for. But the Marine Corps lives on, all that bullshit, right? What am I talking about? But the point is, special operations, guys, you can't afford to lose. I mean, it's not here, not anywhere, but especially not here. The United States, we can afford to lose a few as long as they're SEALs. But here, it's taken years to make these guys. That whole cliche that you cannot mass produce special operations is true. So when you start using them as conventional infantry in a very highly casualty intensive environment, then you're running a risk of losing that capability. And when you're relying on it because you have a big gap, just by the way things are set up between your special operations forces and the rest of the army, right? Notice I say the rest of the army, both conscripts and professional. All right, this is one argument. There's a huge gap, and you're relying so much on these guys. And now, because you never expected to go to war for this long and have them clear buildings, and now you've lost, I'm just saying half of them. I don't mean killed. The Israelis have a very low number of KIA, but they have about 10 dudes seriously wounded. When you look at about 5 to 8 guys seriously wounded, enough to be, hospitalized for a period of time, for everyone killed. So that's a higher ratio than we had in Iraq and Afghanistan. Of course, here they've got evacuating them no distance at all. And I will say this: I mean, when they do their passive acts, everything stops. It's a priority for them. Right? It's not a criticism; it's a priority. I mean, they know they're not going to lose momentum, and so that, they get their guys out of there, and once they do, they've got a very high survival rate. But it means there are a lot of. One of my point is that means that there's a deceptively large number of soft guys, for instance, who are wounded badly enough not to be able to come back to duty anytime soon, but they don't count in the KIA statistics.
Oh,
if that makes sense.
I got a question. So now with all this going on with Iran and them planning an attack on Iran and probably Iran retaliating somehow, what does that do with the timeline they have for going into Rafah? Does it slow it down? Does it?
No, I don't think. Here's what I think. I think the Israeli attack. I can't. Even Israelis are finding it hard to explain why it's happening. But Israeli counter, whatever you want to call it. So I think but I think the rationale is this: hey, we kind of want the last word, but we don't want it to escalate to war. But we don't want Iran to think, hey, we're going to launch all this shit against Israel, and Israel won't do anything, right? Because this was unprecedented. And by the rules of the game, when you do something that no one's done before, you got to be spanked, right? I mean, you've got to. You go to jail without passing go. That's because you've broken the rules of the game. You can't have players changing the rules of the fucking game all the time. It would be chaos. Someone could get hurt. So anyway, so I think there's the argument coming from the Israeli government would probably be, yes, well, we need to do this, that you cannot strike at the Jewish homeland, regardless of whether people got hurt or not. And the Israeli government's also saying they weren't hurt because we destroyed the missiles, or we collectively destroyed the missiles. It was luck. I mean, not luck. It wasn't connected. I mean, they intended to hurt us, and that's what counts. So, but I think if it's done, missiles will hit empty desert, or I don't know. It won't be a cyber attack. I mean, I'm sure there will be a cyber attack, but it won't only be a cyber attack. Hey, by the way, behind the scenes, Iran has launched, cyber attacks have gone up by a factor of like 300% here in Israel since the start of the war. And a cyber, let me see if I can pull up the name, but a particular cyber group has started to have some success. Yeah. Oh, hey, you know what? Something else? I know I'm jumping around a little bit. The Israelis told me they studied the 2019 drone attack on the Saudis' Aramco oil facility. Remember that? They got through, and despite the fact there was a Patriot battery there, a lot of it had to do with early warning and timing, lack of early warning. So they didn't explain exactly why, but I think what that caused them to do is understand the relation, time, space thing, launch indicators, and to focus on those launch indicators, as they've always done, but they really started focusing on the launch indicators in Iran. And for the missile, all the missile heads out there, they're going to say I'm being absurdly simplistic, but you're looking for, like, for instance, if a missile's using liquid fuel, then that has to be prepared a day or two in advance. You're moving all these vehicles around. In other words, you cannot prepare an attack that size without there being indications and warnings. The U.S. satellite system played a part in that. The Israelis told me they didn't necessarily need that, but I mean, that could just be a little bit of chutzpah. But the point is that they literally for 48 hours they were watching all these things being prepared. And again, the Israelis just think this was a natural course of events. It looked like the Iranians were trying to hide it, but it's of course, it's just almost impossible to do so. So once the missiles were launched, when you were talking about initial flight and then terminal, so the initial was caught by, it was a U.S. satellite system. It's like OFEC spy satellites. So those satellites can't pick up enough clarity to pick up the launch preparations, which makes me think maybe it was, it must have been the Israelis that first alerted to this. But once the missiles were launched, they were picked up by the OFEC satellite system, and that gave Israel 10 to 12 minutes advance warning. So the problem with the American system, well, not the problem, the strength of the American system is that it's set up so that although it can't track preparation, it can detect missile launch before it happens. It's like it's not clairvoyant. I meant it's before the missile actually raises off the ground. I'm using absurdly non-technical phrases. I mean, right at the beginning of launch. So before it's even begun to build a trajectory. Okay, so that's really useful. And undoubtedly that system was used to help the Israelis. And then you had kind of a convergence of well, not convergence, but when you're talking about kind of the operational allocation of areas for kind of guarding, all right, both the outer cordon and the inner cordon, to use ground terms, but using, using not using, but collaborating, coordinating with aircraft of the various countries through which these drones were passing. And a number of countries scrambled, of course, their aircraft, and reportedly Saudi and UAE were among it. Definitely Jordan did, and of course the British, UK, and the US. And the US, of course, had the seaborne systems too, which have had. By the way, they've had incredible success. And I want to talk about that too, because I mean, we give the Navy a bunch of shit about being a bunch of, chubby technocrats.
No, you.
No, oh no. But you know what? When it comes to ballistic missile defense, they are really, really fucking good. I mean, I'm not just talking because we have the best technology in the world. I mean, everything from seamanship to, positioning, the tactics. Those guys know their profession. They are really, really sharp. And of course, we've had some bumps in the road to get here collectively as a nation. I mean, we talked about the Vincennes. But I think what they do, and it's a combination of an incredible cutting edge technology that reacts in nanoseconds. But you always need a human in the loop, of course, because it's an American system. Actually, that's not strictly true, but I won't talk about that. No, it's not strictly true. You always have a human in the loop. But
I want to talk about the Iranian, like the retaliatory strike, like when intelligence wise, besides like satellites and what signals intelligence, was there any human intelligence, or at least even like diplomatic back channeling from Iran through the Swiss or whoever else saying like, hey, this is gonna happen, and not maybe this is how it's gonna happen, but like we don't want to fucking kill like 2,000 Israelis because we know it's gonna blow things up.
That's a really good. That's a good point, D. Undoubtedly, that happened.
Yeah.
And I've been told that here that happens, this back channel tour, and there's no details, but of course it happens. It's in both nations' interests, right? To talk behind the scenes. And I'm told yes. But I'm also told, and I have no way of verifying this guy, sorry, but I'm also told that back channel isn't working. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's not that funny, but it's not working like it used to prior to 7 October. It's not, there's something that, and I'm relaying probably, I'm relaying from someone else. So I don't want to get too caught up in the imagination of this, but the point being that Iran's stance has, in a way, hardened since then. At the same time, you're seeing within Israeli, the guy Iran watches, recognition that, no, actually, you don't see a lot of recognition of anything. They are very, they with as good reason, Israelis don't trust the Iranian administration for a nano centimeter. I was trying to think of the smallest, almost, and I mean, you can blame them, but
I mean, the thing they need to trust though is like regime
and
security.
at the same time, exactly that they'll act in their own interests. That's really what this is all about. Because you can negotiate with someone. You don't have to. You may hate them. They may have American or Israeli blood on their hands, but at the end of the day, they're going to do something that's in their own interest. And if by getting them to do that, you save lives or further your gains, you just gotta suck it up and do it, and not get emotional about it. But I think honestly, the scary thing is I don't think anyone does know. When I say before 7 October, or before, when we had discussions when I was still in uniform about Iran, there was always some degree of certainty about things, about the intelligence they were getting and this and that. I don't know if it's an indication of anything, but that kind of confidence is no longer there with the Iranians. It's not. So I don't know what's changed, but I sense something has, and it's concerning. There's no doubt about it that I mean, the Israelis, like, I mean, honestly, any country, Ukrainians, British in the Second World War, shit, even New Yorkers, um, are phlegmatic in the end. You got to go on with life.
Mm.
But there is a lot of, I think it's fair to say, I think my Israeli friends would agree that there's a lot of angst under the surface here. And someone told me about a quarter of the population have left since 7 October. I don't know if that's true. But yeah, country, I don't think who knows if the country will be the same, but there's something has definitely been shattered here. Without sounding too cliched, and it's very tangible, even for me as a Goan, but someone who's been coming here a lot. And it's sad, I mean, of course, all of this is
yeah. So
we're talking about it, we're chatting about it, but it's, obviously, no one here is dismissing the gravitas and the
Right.
tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, I was down on the Kibbutz today being talked through what happened again in Beirut, but this isn't like a guided tour. I'm talking to the families. I was invited down, and it's really, it's hard. It's hard even 6 months afterwards, and I'm not in that to hear to see, So, and I recognize that on both sides, and I mean, there's things like that tragedies of such depth and scope that people are fundamentally changed in their views, and for generations. We talked about that, right? On both sides,
right?
And that's concerning.
Yeah, it begs the question: when does this stop? The back and forth, the tit for tat. When does it stop? And who stops it? Like, is it pressure from outside, from the U.S., Brits, whoever? Is it the people themselves? Do they say, all right, enough's enough? It's like, is it a change of government? Who stops this thing?
That's a really good question, and I can't answer it directly. So I'm going to give you just some views from Israeli friends, okay, and general consensus, and I'm not pretending to talk for all of Israel. I'm just going to, okay. So the consensus from them is that the United States has the ability to change the course of or not change the course of the war. They didn't want that. This is the paradox. They were quite resentful, the ones, my friends, when about the US trying to, I'm not commenting, I'm just saying that. But now there's a sense of, hey, if this starts to go off the fucking rails and we find ourselves now in a tit for tat with Iran, with no off ramp, is the US going to come in and put a stop to this? I find that comforting, that somewhere in the world, at least someone has confidence that the US will step in at the last minute to avert.
Yeah, but what does that look like? Diplomatically?
No, I just think, I think it's a leap of faith. I don't know. I mean, what they're talking about, paradoxically, I think is the administration leaning on their own government. Now, bear in mind, the people who are talking to me are half American. Okay, so again, I'm not talking for Israeli. I know we're going to get a lot of people going, hey, fuck you. We don't give a shit. I'm talking about people with divided loyalties anyway.
Right.
And the feeling that, hey, the US can probably put a stop to this. We don't want to, we don't want to go to war, and the US should put a stop to it if it looks like that's what's going to happen, because we don't want to go to fucking war at that scale. We supported the war in Gaza because it had limited aims, and everyone was traumatized by what had happened, and it had to stop. And so we backed the government 100% that way, and were resentful in the US. But now, no, we didn't buy into a war with Iran,
right?
Yeah.
So I got so let's say Israel continues doing what they're doing, they hit back Iran, even if it's limited in scope or whatever, and Iran keeps hitting back. Then they go into Rafah, and Egypt spins up, right? Because that's an obvious red line for Egypt. And they continue the northern Israel stuff with Lebanon and Hezbollah. you know, they're fighting a war on 3 fronts, more or less. At what point do they ask us, hey, we need help because we're fighting everybody?
Yeah. So I'm smiling inwardly because the Israelis are masterful at I'm not calling it propaganda. Look, the Marine Corps is a propaganda machine. Um, but public diplomacy. I mean, Stratcom across the board. They're all on message. Um, all on message on this. Um, and yeah, I mean, the thing is that it really is only it is well, first of all, it's kind of a feeling, yes, now is the time for Western intervention. But secondly, is this it's kind of this, and we've seen this in the States too, but less. It's this dissonance between um their their feelings of stung national pride, their feelings of isolation, and yet their feelings now of cohesion, right, which is very strong as it was for us in 9/11. They're balancing that against being represented in the international forum by a man that many of them not only don't trust but despise and hold personally responsible for 7 October. That's kind of the paradox of the churn, and they know. When I say they, it's generalizing, but the Israelis have spoken to feel as though while the fighting in Gaza was going on, um, there wasn't a lot of daylight between the far right and we'd call it what you will, mainstream. Although mainstream, his really opinion has shifted markedly to the right since the events of 7 October. But nevertheless, there was even amongst the real extremists, and there are some, and the more kind of moderate liberal Zionists of whom there are many, um, there was no daylight on the Gaza front. But now it changed the daylight when it comes to Rafah, when it comes to Israel's relationship with the United States in particular, but the international community in general. Now there's definitely a gap emerging, and the feeling that among people here, they don't want to be an international pariah. It doesn't matter if they feel in the right, they don't want that. This is a Western-leaning, highly educated, highly technical population. They don't think of themselves as I'm just saying, kind of a Middle Eastern country in that sense. Of course, I mean, intellectually, yes, it's a Middle Eastern country, but I mean,
is there a mechanism?
They don't want to be separated from them.
So let's say it continues on the way the trajectory it's been playing out. And let's say it comes back, they go into Rafah and the cohesion kind of falls apart and that gap widens even more. Is there a mechanism in the Israeli government to like get rid of Netanyahu? I know it's like the wartime thing, so he's got like fucking everyone singing Kumbaya, let's kill like Palestinians, but
it doesn't have to be that dramatic here. The prime minister actually only kind of has persuasive power within and again I forgive me if there are Israelis listening they get it wrong, but the decisions of the government are collective decisions by the cabinet, and the prime minister is first among many, but he's just kind of one vote. And so you don't have to like think of anything as dramatic as a coup. You can pare away one of the moderates in the cabinet and support him. I'm talking from the U.S. perspective, and that is what the U.S. did when it invited Benny Gantz over to the United States, right, and not Netanyahu. So, I think the administration is probably doing this in a smart way. I know they're like, oh my God, we got Andy Milburn's support. Thank God for that. I mean, it's a pretty smart way of doing it. They understand the way that Israeli politics is. It's mirror image. Whoever's working this on the U.S. side, they don't mirror image and think, okay, we got to overthrow Netanyahu. No, I mean that's not good.
No, I'm saying like
No. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand totally what you mean.
I'm not suggesting a coup in Israel.
No. I'm not. Oh my
I
God.
mean, Bibi Netanyahu is pretty shitty. So yeah,
No,
sorry.
I wasn't talking. I meant,
It's just a thought experiment.
Yeah, not a coup. No, we were talking
No,
about
no, a mechanism in the actual government to be like, enough's enough.
political. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of political, not coercion, but compelling. Yeah. But I think the U.S. is always going to be so sensitive about being seen to meddle in another country's elections. I mean, we're still kind of recovering from having done so in Russian elections, right, in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not.
And most
I'm not
elections.
citing, yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Some without elections. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chile and actually Iran.
Yep. That was a big one too.
Yeah. It was the US and the Brits who put the Shah in power in 1953 and started this whole ball rolling. Fucking colonialists. Yeah.
All right, Andy, when are you back?
As if Sykes-Picot wasn't enough. Hey, I'm back on. I'll be back by the next episode. What day is it? Wednesday? Tuesday?
Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is Wednesday. Okay. Yeah, I'll be back Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, Monday.
All right.
When does this go out?
Goes out tonight, Wednesday night, 8 p.m.
Oh, awesome.
Quick
Mind
turnaround.
you, if you've got, I'm saying, hey guys, watch this, but if you've got to this part in the show, you've probably already seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, that way.
Don't forget to like and
That'll work.
subscribe. If you're listening to us on audio, on the audio platforms, rate and review it 5 stars. It's very important. Andy's book, the link is in the description. When the Tempest Gathers, it's really good. I've actually read it. I'm not lying.
Really?
I swear to
You
God.
struggle with the Audible version, eh?
I know. I did. What else?
I didn't know they translated it into Bronx.
Brooklyn, bro. Brooklyn. Bronx. Jesus. The patreon.com/the team house. All the links will be in the description, so please check them out. Any comments?
Yeah.
Hit us up. Let us know whatever we got wrong. I mean, you will anyway, so it's fine. But get engaged. It's
Please. I love the comments.
Yeah.
I'm aside the death threats aside. They're great. That's what please do. And we try and answer them where we can. Where we understand them, we answer them.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Or I verbally assault you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right. Bye, everybody.